Hello and welcome to a new video on my channel. Today I present to you part 11 of the story Pandora and the Eternal War. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my channel with your friends. In today's story, I'll be introducing the conclusion of the Meta Cup and the Helios Academy. And without further ado, let's dive straight into the story. Enjoy the journey. Pandora sat quietly on the bench in the women's locker room, her gaze fixed on the woman from the Assel clan. The woman moved in a way that was just human enough not to raise suspicion, at least not unless you were really paying attention. But now, with Pandora's newfound knowledge, it was hard not to notice. Every movement the woman made felt wrong, mechanical, not quite alive. It was clear now, and Pandora wondered how she had missed something so obvious. She couldn't take her eyes off the woman, sitting there in short shorts and a plain t-shirt, staring blankly at the holographic fight projected in front of them. The dullness in her eyes, the absence of any real emotion or life, it all clicked into place. How could I have overlooked this? Pandora thought, a sense of frustration bubbling inside her. It was so obvious. Something was off about her, but I just assumed it was because of her clan's isolated way of life. Pandora felt a shiver run down her spine. Now that she was fully aware of the truth, the realization that this woman was already dead, and yet somehow still functioning, gnawed at her. But what can I even do with this information? She thought, feeling the weight of it pressing down on her. It's not like I can just announce to everyone that she's not alive. What would that even accomplish? Would the Heroes Association care? What could they even do about it? Pandora scratched the back of her head, her mind racing, her thoughts tangling together. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but it only made her head spin. She glanced back at the woman, her thoughts darkening. I could take her abilities. I could steal those 5 Arcanist powers she's holding. But something held her back. Pandora couldn't quite bring herself to make the decision. There was no reason to act on impulse. Not yet. She exhaled slowly, deciding against it for now. The woman, this overhuman, as Pandora thought of her, wasn't going anywhere. The name of the clan echoed in her head. Assel. What are you really hiding? Pandora mused silently. Her attention shifted slightly, catching Camilla's thoughtful expression beside her. Camilla seemed to be lost in her own world, no doubt reflecting on the same strange events. But Pandora couldn't dwell on it anymore. She shook her head, willing herself to stop thinking about the Asile clan's dead puppets. There would be time later to investigate the necromancer, or whoever was controlling the dead, but not now. Focusing her thoughts, she turned her eyes away from the woman and back to the fight playing out in the arena. The holographic display flickered, preparing to announce the next match. Video 11, page 2. A boy stepped onto the stone platform, his clothes plain and unremarkable, but Pandora's sharp eyes noticed the faint outlines of armor beneath them. He had kept his combat gear on, simply covering it with regular clothes. Pandora found this amusing. It was mandatory to wear the same gear throughout the tournament, but there was no rule against layering regular street clothes over it. Clever. I'd do the same, she thought, a slight smirk playing at the corner of her lips. She had a knack for finding loopholes, and exploiting gray areas was something she respected. As the countdown reached 0, the boy lifted his foot and brought it down with a solid stomp. In an instant, a claw emerged from the shadow of his opponent, a woman with the ability to control plants. She barely managed to leap aside, but her shadow remained pinned in place. Something strange was happening. Her shadow stretched unnaturally, becoming 3-dimensional, morphing into a twisted figure of black smoke, clad in a haunting golden armor. Pandora's heart skipped a beat. Her breath quickened as she watched the black phantom take form. It moved autonomously, its presence radiating a deadly purpose. Pandora could hardly look away, her mouth suddenly dry, yet her mind brimming with anticipation. It was like staring at a rare delicacy, something forbidden that she desperately wanted to devour. This power, to control a phantom like that, she thought. I could steal it. The thought of taking that ability for herself was tantalizing. It wasn't the power itself that pulled at her, though. Pandora knew what it was. Her own twisted desires, her madness surfacing in moments like these. She could feel it, this deep-rooted insanity that made the thought of stripping the boy of everything he had worked for almost fun. Pandora was self-aware enough to recognize this side of her. If anyone knew what was going on inside her mind, they would call her deranged. But no one did. Her emotional mask, carefully crafted, hid it all from the world. On the outside, she looked focused and engaged in the fight, just like anyone else watching. Inside, though, she was filled with a euphoric rush at the idea of taking that power. The list of abilities she wanted to steal was growing longer with each passing day, and this boy's phantom control had just rocketed to the top of it. She knew it would be difficult to claim all of these powers in the future, but that only made the challenge more enticing. Pandora's eyes flickered back to the fight as the boy's opponent, the woman with plant control, launched herself into the air. Vines twisted and lashed out, trying to snare the phantom, but it dissolved into darkness, slipping free from her grasp. A moment later, it reformed elsewhere, materializing with the same menacing golden armor. It can shift between gas and solid form, Pandora realized, her desire for the power intensifying. The ability to phase between states at will. That was not just useful, it was an incredible skill. Her mind raced, weighing the possibilities of how she could use such a power if it were hers. Camilla turned to Pandora, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "Hey, Pandora, I've been meaning to ask, what's with those strange bumps on your back?" She gestured lightly, her tone friendly. "I noticed them before, but when I asked about them, you kind of dodged the question. I mean, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Pandora paused, a faint, almost secretive smile flickering across her face. "Oh, those? They're nothing important. Really?" She shrugged casually. "I could explain someday, but it doesn't really matter right now." Camilla seemed satisfied with the answer, though she studied Pandora's expression a moment longer. Then she gave a quick nod. "All right," she said, her tone shifting as she reminded. "Just don't forget, you're up soon. If you need to get anything ready, now's the time. Because once the signal hits, it's straight to the arena." Pandora's gaze sharpened with focus, and she nodded, feeling her heartbeat quicken at the thought of stepping into the stadium. The crowd, the rush of battle, and the weight of expectation all awaited her, and she felt that familiar surge of energy as the countdown to her fight drew closer. Pandora rose from the bench and walked briskly toward the locker room, the echo of her steps underscoring her determination. She slipped off her street clothes and reached for the one-piece suit lying neatly folded nearby. She slid it over her skin, feeling an odd looseness as the fabric hung slightly oversized on her frame. The initial brush of the cool, synthetic material against her skin made her shiver with discomfort. Then, with a soft hiss, the suit activated, the fabric contracting and molding to her form. In moments, it became skin-tight, clinging to her in a way that felt almost exposing. A moment later, she reached for the overlay, a secondary armor made from a dark, intelligent material that adjusted to her body. It appeared fluid at first, shifting as it adapted to her shape before solidifying into a hard, protective layer. Pandora could sense the armor's design, meant to absorb impacts and distribute force, shielding her vital areas. Her helmet lay nearby, an optional piece that she could wear if she chose, but she decided against it for now. As she fastened the armor into place, she felt an odd, almost electric tingle in her back, where the bony ridges of her wing bones pressed against the suit. It was as if her fledgling wings were preparing to emerge, each bone arching just under the surface. Pandora knew a growth spurt could be problematic while wearing armor. If they grew too quickly, her wings might push through painfully. Although she wasn't sure when they would be fully formed, she felt an unsettling uncertainty about it. These wings seemed different from those of other vampires, and the unpredictability of their growth left her uneasy. Adjusting the armor one last time, Pandora left the locker room. Despite the suit's snug fit, she felt oddly exposed, as though it clung too close to her skin. After a moment's thought, she decided to slip her street clothes back on over the armor, mirroring what the other fighter had done. No rule forbade this, and she preferred the added layer of comfort it provided. She quickly put her clothes on over the suit, unbothered by the presence of the other women in the room. Emerging back into the waiting area, she glanced at the large holographic display, noting the end of the current match. She was up next. Watching intently, Pandora's mind sharpened on her own preparation. Now that she possessed Lilith's fire manipulation abilities, she found herself more resistant to heat, a comforting realization as she began to test her strength. It wouldn't stop every temperature, but as long as the flames didn't surpass the intensity of her Arcanus, she was safe. Focusing, she stretched out her palm, feeling energy surge through her as she formed a small dagger out of plasma. The bluish construct shimmered, sizzling in the air as she took hold of it, Camilla watching with a flicker of surprise. Pandora concentrated, feeling the dense, malleable energy between her fingers. With more focus, she solidified the handle and intensified the heat of the blade. It radiated with warmth, but her skin only felt a pleasant buzz, almost like holding a warm piece of putty. Smiling slightly, she gripped the dagger tighter, feeling the strength of her Arcanus flow through her, honing her control. As Pandora moves the searing plasma dagger in her hand, she notes with amusement how weightless it feels. The absence of heft is striking, almost humorous, given the power it radiates. She considers how clever it is that, by using multiple Arcanus abilities in careful sequence, she can maintain the illusion of having far fewer powers than she actually does. In this moment, she knows that no one could easily guess that she's using Lilith's fire manipulation Arcanus to withstand the intense heat of her own plasma. There's no reason for anyone to suspect it. After all, no method exists to prove that she wouldn't be naturally resistant to her own power. The thought makes her smile, a subtle smirk that hides her satisfaction at staying one step ahead of the heroes, the factions, and her enemies. Using each power's effects and side benefits seamlessly, she can keep up a facade that lets her enemies see only what she wants them to see. In the end, they'll have no idea how deep her abilities really run. Pandora rises from the bench, throwing a brief, knowing glance at Camilla. With a casual wave, she heads down a long metallic corridor, where lights hang at regular intervals along the ceiling, casting a sterile glow on the smooth gray walls. Thin seams between metal panels trace faint lines along the walls, adding an industrial texture to the otherwise spotless hall. As she walks, the nervous excitement in her chest fades, leaving only her cold, calculating focus. She recalls the profile of the opponent she's set to face, a blurry image sharpening as she walks, her mind piecing together the graphics she'd glimpsed earlier in the common room and the women's locker room. With each step, her determination builds, fueling her singular goal of securing her place at Helios Academy. Pandora reaches the illuminated outline of the exit door. As she steps through the threshold and into the arena, the roar of the crowd crashes over her, blending with the celebratory buzz that fills the stadium. Her eyes narrow at the sight. To the crowd, this might be a symbol of peace and justice, of everything the Hero Alliance stands for. But to Pandora, it's something much darker. The cheers, the jubilant faces, they embody a society that once took everything from her. The sight of them, so oblivious, fuels her anger. Each person here nothing more than a loyal believer in the Hero Alliance's facade. To Pandora, they represent everything she despises. She steps further into the noisy stadium, her resolve set, her mind as sharp and unyielding as the weapon she's crafted. As Pandora steps onto the stone platform, she can't help but be a bit impressed. The platform has been completely restored, even though it was shattered only minutes before. She's lost track of how many times this stone slab has been smashed apart and how often it's been mended by one of the heroes. If she remembers correctly, the one responsible is the hero, standing at the edge with cement gray skin and a black and yellow suit that reminds her of a construction worker, though a more modern, form-fitting version. Her gaze shifts back to her opponent, who wears the same Academy-issued armor as she does, eyes locked on the timer floating in midair between them. Pandora sidesteps as the timer ticks down from 30 seconds. She ignores the commentators, focusing instead on the countdown, noting with interest how the numbers remain visible from every angle, as if rotating with her line of sight. An intriguing feature, she thinks, right as the clock hits 0. The boy across from her makes a swift gesture, and knives fly out from his coat, speeding towards her. She sidesteps, dodging the blades with ease, only to see him twist his wrist, redirecting the knives in midair. Sunlight gleams off the spinning metal as Pandora dances aside once more, a faint smile crossing her face. It strikes her as almost amusing that this boy has managed to reach this level with such a singular skill. But then he pulls more knives from his coat, and she realizes with a tinge of respect that he controls more than just a pair. The stakes shift as he reveals a fistful of slim, metallic needles, and, with a flick of his wrist, sends them hurtling her way. It's not their raw power that forces her back, but rather their sheer number and precision. Pandora darts out of the way again, hearing the sharp hum of needles as they slice past her ear. She knows she can regenerate if injured, but she also knows better than to let her guard down. A sudden prick, and she looks down to see a needle embedded in her shoulder. Relieved, she realizes he can't control the needles once they're lodged in her body. If he could move them once inside, she'd be facing far more devastating damage. This knowledge steadies her, and with a swift tug, she pulls the needle free. The instant it leaves her flesh, it stops midair, hovering as he reclaims control. She's seen enough. Focusing her energy, she channels her plasma arcanus through new pathways, manifesting another plasma dagger in her free hand. With a swift, calculated throw, she sends the blue glowing blade flying towards him. He raises a makeshift shield from his hovering needles, a silvery, buzzing disc that intercepts her weapon mid-flight. The dagger collides, flaring brightly before dissipating with a fierce crackle. Without pausing, Pandora whips her arm forward, releasing 5 searing plasma orbs in a swift arc toward her opponent. He tries to dodge, shifting just as she anticipated. She releases another plasma bolt directly into his escape path, striking him in a burst of turquoise fire. The impact hurls him out of the arena, and the commentator's voice rings out, declaring Pandora the victor. She takes a breath, steady and victorious. Pandora leaps gracefully down from the stone platform, catching a glance from the referee, who looks at her with a mix of surprise and confusion. Ignoring him, she walks over to her opponent, a dazed figure, already sitting up. The Academy armor had absorbed most of the impact, leaving only a few minor burns and bruises that Pandora is certain will heal quickly. Offering a hand, she smiles and says, "Come on, need a lift?" The opponent stares at her, eyes suddenly bright with a spark Pandora can't quite place. As she helps the figure to their feet, Pandora realizes her opponent isn't a young man after all. Her eyes fall to subtle curves in the chest area, and she recalls the word tomboy someone used recently. This opponent was simply on the more androgynous side, and Pandora had assumed incorrectly. Still, something feels off. As the young woman thanks her and heads independently toward the medical station, Pandora's gaze drifts to the crowd, where her attention locks on one particular face among the spectators. It's a woman with almost black-brown eyes and dark hair, standing out sharply in the bustling stadium. Just as Pandora is about to step toward her, a voice calls out, reminding her to clear the platform area. She moves off without taking her eyes off the woman, feeling a prickle of recognition. Her sharp senses as a vampire, already heightened, tug at her instincts, whispering that this woman and another figure she'd encountered in the street were one and the same. Just as Pandora begins to dismiss the thought as unlikely, she catches a flash of the same woman, or so it seems, a few seats down. This time, however, she has blonde hair and blue eyes. Pandora narrows her gaze, studying the two identical figures, now separated by only a few spectators. It would be logical to think they were identical twins, but something deeper in her gut says otherwise. There's a distinct unease, a whisper in her heightened senses that tells her these women aren't merely twins. They're one and the same, shifting before her eyes in a way she can't yet explain. Unable to shake the feeling, Pandora resolves to keep an eye on this peculiar mystery, her instincts urging her to look closer. When Pandora returns to the room, a strange blend of changing area, spa, waiting room, and various other functions she hasn't quite deciphered, she spots Camilla waiting for her. She notices that the next match will start in under 2 minutes. Camilla gives her a knowing look and comments with a smile. That was a fast one. Pandora just shrugs, thinking to herself that she's lucky she didn't face someone like Makito or Reno. That would have been an actual challenge. She stretches and takes a seat on the bench, letting the events of the day drift through her mind as she continues to chat idly with Camilla. Meanwhile, just a few meters away in the stands, something far more intriguing unfolds. A woman with striking blue eyes and blonde hair sits among the spectators, observing everything intently. With a subtle motion, she activates a holographic display from her wristband, carefully crafted so that only she can view it. To onlookers, her wristband simply glows. On the translucent square display, hovering just above her arm, a series of messages from various chat members, identified only by numbers, scrolls across the screen. Is everyone following through on their assignments? Inquires number 1. Number 5 replies, nothing interesting here. Just sitting in front of a computer. Number 4 adds, right now the priority is keeping a close watch on the Heroes Association. Stay focused. Then, number 17 chimes in with an anxious question. What do we do if someone gets caught? I imagine that's going to be unpleasant. Number 1 responds, reminding everyone, we've been over this. If anyone gets captured, no information about the rest of us can be revealed. Number 2 remarks, true, but each of us is, well, it's like we're alive. If it comes to torture or coercion, we'd all respond exactly like the original. A quick warning appears from another participant, urging number 2, avoid using the term original in this chat. It's caused enough problems as it is. Unfazed, number 2 replies, it's just a simple reference that there was once an original among us. It doesn't really matter who it was. Number 1 supports this sentiment, adding, the numbering is random. It's irrelevant who the original is or isn't. We're all perfect copies. Besides, number 1 continues, I'm not even sure the original remembers being the original anymore. Another number, number 92, cuts in sharply. Enough. Let's stay focused. Some of us need to get back to work. The woman closes the display with a flick of her wrist, leaving only the faintest shimmer of her wristband's glow, and resumes her silent, intent observation of the arena. Number 16 glances over at number 15, catching the subtle nod from the clone with nearly black, dark brown eyes and jet black hair. Like many in the collective, number 16 occasionally wonders about the possibility of an original, someone who may have been the first conscious creation, with some undeniable proof of being the original. But even if that were true, admitting it openly could create tension, possibly leading to unrest. No one would know if the original might have a drive or potential for dominance, unlike the rest of the copies. Their musings are interrupted by a message from number 5, hinting at a slight disturbance. Since the recent attack by the Phantom, the Hero Alliance seems to have discreetly increased their security. Number 16 reads the message and, somewhat puzzled, asks number 5 why they were informed individually. Number 5 explains that numbers 1 through 4 have already been updated, and that number 16 and number 15 are receiving this information as stationed observers. Subtle as the security changes may be, it's the absence of the hero Luma that's even more curious. Officially, Luma claims to be suffering from stomach issues, but number 5 is skeptical. Sudden symptoms without prior conditions? Suspicious. Even though the Hero Alliance officially approved Luma's medical leave, number 5 concludes that keeping an eye on her is advisable. Number 5 further mentions that the Hero Alliance has been showing signs of some sort of preparation over the past month. Intrigued, number 16 replies, asking what these preparations might entail. Number 5 admits to being unsure. Hacking into the Hero Alliance would be challenging even for them, given the heavy security measures in place. A high-risk move. Just then, number 1 reappears with news. An offer has come in from the Octad. Number 16 immediately questions the intention, typing back, does the Octad want to recruit us? Didn't we make it clear we're not taking sides? Number 17 then reminds both number 16 and number 15 to focus on their task, observing the Hero Alliance's activities. Number 15 seems unfazed, remarking that the whole event will be available online later anyway. Watching live isn't particularly critical, and these tournament talents don't pose a genuine threat. But number 16 protests. There was a girl, a woman, really, watching us rather closely. Number 15 waves this off, saying, it was probably just a coincidence. Number 16 looks away from her holographic armband and back to the fighters. Something about the girl with the violet eyes and black hair didn't feel right. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a mere coincidence. The girl seemed familiar, not just in appearance, but in the intense gaze she carried. an unmistakably intelligent and calculating look. But there was something else beyond just intellect, a cold presence. Number 16 felt emanating from the girl. It was as though the girl knew number 16 was something strange. The thought makes her increasingly uncomfortable, yet the deepest chill runs down her spine when she realizes that the girl had exuded an aura of dominance, like a ruler, an emperor, someone whose very essence commanded authority. Then it clicks. The girl with violet eyes looked so much like Camilla, the daughter of Theodore, or by his hero name, Starbreaker, the strongest man in the world. They had been seen together that morning, exiting a park, which had already sparked a wildfire of speculation in the tabloids. Number 16 recalls reading about it while preparing for the Meta Cup. The resemblance between this girl and Camilla lingers in number 16's mind for a few minutes. The girl's eyes, though violet, had a crystalline amethyst-like hue, almost wine red, while Camilla's eyes were a deeper purple. But why were they together? And what exactly was the nature of their relationship? Soon, though, her attention drifts back to the Octad and their motives. The Octad, 8 different gangs banding together with the goal of undermining public trust in the Hero Alliance. But what would the Octad want with them? Do they even know the truth? That every one of them is an exact copy of the original? Do they understand that each clone, every copy, possesses the same will to survive and the same survival instincts? It seems unlikely. Perhaps the Octad only sees them as a potential endless army, disposable resources. Suddenly, number 16 feels an unusual link, a strange connection to her other forms, her other bodies and clones. It feels like a web slowly forming among them, a network of minds, memories, and identities. It's only a brief sensation, but in that instant, number 16 senses a network of over 150 clones, scattered across Metropolis's Alpha, Gamma, and Delta. The spontaneous flicker of this arcane ability fades just as quickly as it appeared, but the reaction of number 15 confirms this that was real. They were all connected, even if just for a fraction of a second. Moments later, it happens again, like waves rippling out from an individual and passing through the entire collective. And in that fleeting moment of telepathic clarity, each mind in the swarm realizes one truth. There is an original, a single point from which all were copied. But this point is no more real than any other within the network. It's a collective of perfect copies. None of them feel any different from each other within the telepathic web. The original is simply the first among equals. Number 16 looks momentarily bewildered, but quickly regains her composure. She glances back at number 15, who sits about 5 meters behind her to the left. Their eyes meet briefly, and a silent exchange seems to pass between them. Suddenly, something clicks as their abilities synchronize, allowing number 16 to hear number 15's thoughts, as if they were connected by some sort of built-in radio. Number 16 says, confused, "Are you experiencing this too? Of course you are." Number 15 responds, "Exactly what I was thinking. What on earth is happening to our ability right now? Do you think it's time sensitive, or maybe related to how many of us there are? Could this be a form of training? And why is it happening to all of us at once?" Number 16 shrugs, uncertain of the answer, but aware that they'll need to explore this phenomenon further. Turning her focus back to the current fight, she watches a bizarre duel unfold between one figure with extreme speed and another wielding red lightning. The lightning controller isn't just manipulating bolts. The speedster is actively dodging, each strike seemingly more intense. Suddenly, the speedster halts, red streaks across his shoulder where the lightning hit. He trembles slightly, appearing paralyzed. As another red bolt strikes, his body stiffens further, his eyes close, and he takes a few staggering steps backward before tumbling off the stone platform. The match concludes in less than 30 seconds. Impressed, number 16 realizes she hadn't expected to witness such a powerful ability here. Both she and number 15 agree that these red lightning strikes are something to keep an eye on. Then, number 1's voice interrupts them, saying, "All right, I don't know exactly what's happening, but try to keep your Arcanus abilities under control. We don't want to trigger any hero association detectors. The evolution of our Arcanus powers can be studied later. For now, let's avoid drawing attention with these telepathic connections." From number 20 onwards, 10 clones are currently researching this collective effect, so keep calm and observe. Number 1, end and out. Number 16 rolls her eyes, finding number 1's overly cautious instructions and need for precision a bit grating. She understands, though. It's a habit she knows well from her time in the military, or rather, from the time the original spent in the military. Back then, there were only 16 clones, and they weren't what they are today. If she were to describe the development of their cloning ability, number 16 would say it started with the original's capacity to maintain and control just one clone at a time. She remembers, as if it were her own childhood, how she used this clone ability in kindergarten and primary school to avoid attending class, letting the clone wander off whenever something unimportant came up. The memory feels vivid and personal, despite her knowledge that she isn't the original. She realizes that the ethical and moral distinction between herself and the original has blurred. Their similarity is so profound that even she can't discern whether she feels more real than the original. In a way, she recalls those memories as if they were her own. What she used her clone for was amusing, and over time her ability grew until she could manage up to 5 clones simultaneously. From that moment, her power grew stronger. Initially in the military, she could only control 5 clones at once, each following simple commands. But as time passed, the clones became increasingly lifelike, even displaying near-human intelligence. The final breakthrough in her Arcanus evolution came during a war against vampires when she nearly died, or almost did, and her power, her Arcanus, evolved in response. Her abilities adapted, driven by an intense will to survive at any cost, pushing her power from C rank to B rank. This leap allowed her to create perfect copies of herself. The thought amused number 16, as she clearly remembered that, whether it was herself as a clone or another version she could no longer quite recall, each clone emerged without clothes. Her ability worked by restructuring the matter around her at an atomic level to form a flawless copy. This power even allowed her to essentially revive dead versions of herself, though in reality, it was the creation of a new clone from the same material. Thankfully, this phenomenon unsettled her enemies. The memory of that time was chilling. Only 10 of them managed to survive, only to return and find that the Hero Association had labeled them villains, and her parents had succumbed to addiction. In the end, everything she had fought for in the military was destroyed within weeks by the Hero Association's actions. The Hero Association's moral pressure, the shame and disgrace it placed on her and her family, ultimately transformed her into what they already perceived her to be: a villain. Even now, she and her clones struggle to understand how this tragedy came to be. The only thing number 16 knew for certain was that by the time she returned, it was already too late. Even though there is some suspicion, number 16 still finds it unclear, even after several years, why they were classified as villains when they hadn't truly done anything wrong. As she thinks about it, no clear answers come to mind. She yawns, feeling a complete lack of the euphoric energy radiating from the surrounding crowd, who are cheering and focused on the fighters. Currently, a D-rank hero with a physical enhancement ability is battling a hero with a C-rank earth manipulation skill. Though some abilities seem similar, they all work differently. Number 16 knows that in this world, no abilities are identical. She and her clones are an exception to this, as they share exactly the same personality and powers, akin to a hive mind of bees or other swarm creatures. This shared ability is likely the only reason her clones can replicate themselves. Number 16 muses. Thank goodness I met him a few years ago. I think it was about 3.5 years back. I doubt Eisenhut is his real name, but thank heavens that Taylor made these clothes for me. The idea of popping up naked with each clone was truly uncomfortable. But, after all, my power is only cloning, not duplicating material. Imagine if I could clone weapons or other items. That would be amazing, but sadly, I can't, she thinks, her attention shifting back to the fight. She watches as the young man with foreign-looking features focuses as the man with the enhancement ability charges toward him. Suddenly, chunks of concrete tear from the ground, flying to block the man's path. Number 16 is impressed by the intensity of the fight. The young man leaps into the air to dodge the projectiles, then, with a strong downward kick, crashes back down, creating a dust cloud that obscures his opponent's vision. An instant later, cracks spider out behind the enhanced man as the Earth user springs from the ground like a mole, firing more stones that send his opponent stumbling out of the arena. It's a minor push, but crossing the boundary results in disqualification nonetheless. As the announcer declares the winner, number 16 looks up at the sky, momentarily lost in thought as the usual ceremonial activities continue at the center of the arena. Any injured fighters are tended to, and the arena is quickly reset, taking only a few minutes. She thinks back to Eisenhut, the mysterious rogue tailor who makes a living crafting clothing in the underworld, even though he could likely make money through more conventional means. Without Eisenhut, who had made clothes from her own hair, it would have been a real hassle to get new clothes every time, especially in the middle of a battle. That would have been downright inconvenient for her and her clones. Suddenly, her attention snaps back as the announcer declares the next match: Pandora versus Makido Hustle. Both fighters have demonstrated skill, variety, and agility in their use of Arcanus abilities. But now the question remains: will Makido Hustle, with his ability to summon ice-cold flames, win? Or will the young, rising heroine with two different Arcanus abilities come out on top? She claims to have only discovered her second Arcanus today, or maybe yesterday. As number 16 watches the scene unfold, she sees a young woman named Pandora stepping onto the new stone platform. Opposite her, Makido Hustle emerges from a tunnel and joins her. Makido, highly anticipated to deliver a strong performance and earn high marks, faces a formidable opponent. Pandora's unexpected appearance in the Meta Cup throws off all predictions, especially after her victory over Lilith Hassel, another promising contender, and Makido's equal. Standing there confidently, Pandora's eyes gleam with a dominant aura, her presence alone making it clear she isn't one to underestimate. Number 16 notices someone standing in the shadows of the entrance from which Pandora came, a young woman with a striking scar on her face. It's Camilla. As Camilla's eyes focus on Pandora, her heartbeat quickens with the intensity of the fight, her gaze riveted by Pandora's swift and agile movements. Dodging Makido's icy blue flames with remarkable speed, Pandora's abilities seem to surpass those typical of D-rank physical enhancement Arcanus users. Few at that level could make it this far. But there's something more. Pandora isn't revealing the full extent of her Arcanus abilities. Instead, she maintains the impression of having only two, an intriguing choice that captivates Camilla, who finds her heart racing. She can't deny the allure Pandora holds, an appeal that's almost consuming. How can she look so stunning while fighting? Camilla wonders, as possessive and darker thoughts grow within her. She's not naive enough to ignore how obsessed she's becoming. Knowing that Pandora is the prophesied child of chaos, fated to bring death and destruction, only intensifies Camilla's fascination, drawing her in even closer. I want to be on her side, Camilla thinks. It isn't just the rewards that loyalty to Pandora might bring. It's the chance to serve someone as powerful as Pandora is destined to become. The prospect of following such a dominant figure exhilarates her, and Camilla is even amused by her own thoughts. She realizes that she might have the mindset of a yandere, someone who is obsessively devoted. She reflects on what has driven her to this point, to the person she has become. A wave of painful memories surfaces. She recalls the days and nights spent crying, the hurt and betrayal from when her father had saved only her, letting everyone else perish. Most heartbreakingly, her lover. He had never approved of her relationship, and his choice to save her instead of her beloved had shattered her. She can never forgive him for that decision. As Pandora fights, she radiates an aura of greatness and ambition, filling Camilla with awe. Deep down, Camilla knows that what she sees might not even be entirely real. Pandora's abilities likely include a power to alter others' perceptions. Still, Pandora's presence alone captivates Camilla, making her seem like an empress, someone truly worth dedicating herself to. The more she watches, the more Camilla feels that Pandora is the ideal she's longed for, someone she could live for and serve completely. Camilla's thoughts darken, becoming more obsessive. She senses the intensity of her feelings, overwhelming, consuming, and far from normal. She knows her affection is moving too fast, but she can't control the pull Pandora has over her. Her own nature, her yandere spirit, takes over, clouding her mind and making it impossible to rein in her feelings. Desperate to break free from the obsession, Camilla tries to refocus, striking herself lightly to push the twisted thoughts away. But even as she tries to clear her mind, her eyes remain glued to Pandora, watching her every move. Just then, a fiery sphere of turquoise flames crashes into Pandora, striking her directly. Camilla's breath catches as she fears for Pandora's safety. But, to her amazement, Pandora lands gracefully, seemingly untouched by the cold flames, with the icy mist condensing around her in a ghostly aura. The attack has no effect. Pandora rushes forward as though the freezing flames were nothing, her confidence and strength undeterred. Pandora's momentum is unstoppable. With a powerful kick, she sends Makito Hassel flying out of the arena, crashing against a wall. His armor absorbs the blow, but it's clear the fight is over. As Pandora stands there, her armor dusted with frost but unharmed, she exudes the triumphant aura of a rising star, a beacon in the arena. Camilla feels a fierce admiration and love surging within her, enchanted by Pandora's resilience and power. In Pandora, she sees a star, a force destined to bring both brilliance and chaos to the world.
Camilla watches Pandora, filled with joy at having met her. She believes their meeting was a stroke of destiny, a cosmic twist that has given both of them a common bond. Not only do they share similar interests, but they also share a burning desire for revenge. Together, their vengeance will be all the more effective. She watches as Pandora leaps down from the stone platform and strides over to Makito, her gaze calm but sharp. With a light smile, she extends a hand to him, offering to help him up. But Makito shakes his head, declining her hand as he pushes himself up on his own. Pandora shrugs, turns, and in one swift movement, leaps back across the entire stone platform, landing next to Camilla in a cloud of dust. The sun catches in Pandora's violet-red eyes as she and Camilla head down the corridor together. They return to the women's reserved area, a small space equipped with a dressing room, a mini spa, and a shower. Pandora stretches, feeling the weight of the recent fight slowly fade, and wonders who her next opponents will be. A quick glance at the tournament bracket shows her that her next match, the third round, has been significantly shortened. And, as fate would have it, she's slated for the fourth match in this upcoming round. She realizes she has a moment to sit back, relax, and think about her next steps. Joining Helios Academy had been her primary goal so far, and with her arcane skills on display, she feels confident that she's proven her potential. Yet, she can't shake the feeling that there's something more she could do to become even stronger. Camilla seems to admire her, perhaps even have feelings for her, though Pandora doesn't fully understand why. Still, Camilla is loyal and eager to help, and if she can provide a list of heroes and their abilities, Pandora's path forward will be much clearer. Just as these thoughts unfold, her mind drifts to an absent face. Luma, also known as the Mentor, within the Hero Association. Luma's arcane ability is unique, she can perceive others' potential. But, strangely, she's nowhere to be seen. Curious, Pandora pulls up her wristband's holographic screen, leaning against the room's stone wall as faint chatter echoes from nearby. After a bit of searching, she finds that Luma had reportedly taken leave due to illness. It strikes Pandora as odd, though. Luma had appeared healthy up until now. Could it be that she glimpsed something disturbing in Pandora's potential? If so, Pandora feels unsettled by the implications. If Luma saw her present potential, that's one thing. But if she saw the power Pandora could wield in the future, there might be reason for concern. Frustrated that she can't leave without forfeiting her place in the Meta Cup, Pandora feels chained to the arena. Some matches are thrilling, others over in the blink of an eye, but each round brings her closer to the final goal. She watches the next fight unfold as Sari, a young fighter from the Omega Metropolis with explosive fists, faces off against a boy with a peculiar black substance as his arcane. It seems to be a sticky, toxic webbing that he skillfully uses to dodge Sari's powerful punches. The boy, whose name Pandora overheard as Martin, appears agile, dodging another punch as Sari's glowing fist barely grazes his hair, igniting a bit of his shadowy webbing. With a sharp step back, Martin narrowly avoids another strike, the arena dust swirling as he maneuvers with fluid ease. He fires two black threads to the ground behind him, pulling himself back to create some distance. Pandora can't help but note the eerie beauty of his ability, though the sticky, toxic quality is unnerving. Sari rushes him again, but he's prepared this time, launching a sphere of sticky poison toward her. Sari dodges deftly, closing in with a powerful kick to his stomach, sending him tumbling from the platform. The announcer's voice rings out, declaring Martin disqualified. Pandora, now alone with her thoughts, picks up a Metacup brochure from the wall's brochure rack and flips through it, intrigued by the information inside. She already knew the tournament was held annually, but this year, there's a new twist. The format of the final round remains a secret until the last day. This suspenseful strategy keeps participants on edge. She also learns for the first time that the Metacup's top prizes extend beyond fame or corporate sponsorship. The first place winner earns a coveted, gold Meta VIP card, a training privilege unlike any other. Second place earns a silver Meta VIP card. Though the specifics remain a mystery, the cards seem highly valuable, as many competitors yearn for them even more than the cash prizes. As Pandora readies for her next match, another thought gnaws at her. She's intrigued by the power of the undead warriors controlled by the Asylum clan. The possibilities excite her. If she could command similar beings, crafting creatures that were more like living puppets than true zombies, she could wield an obedient, skillful army of formidable allies. Yet, she hesitates, unsure of how this necromantic power functions. Revealing any interest to the Asylum clan could be risky. Even though the Asylum woman from whom she'd acquired these abilities is dead, Pandora worries that if her theft were somehow discovered, it might be reported back to the necromancers. The risk is too great. With a sigh, Pandora decides to pass on stealing the 5 abilities tempting her from this corpse, despite the allure. She rubs her temples, realizing how scattered her thoughts have been amidst the chaos of the Metacup and its many challenges. The two main worries haunting her are Luma and her strange, perceptive arcane. Did Luma see the future potential Pandora could reach, or merely her current capability? Pandora still wonders if Luma's arcane ability could even register her potential at all, considering her layered, stolen abilities. The weight of these questions gives her a slight headache, and she exhales sharply. Just then, a nudge from Camilla snaps Pandora out of her thoughts. Camilla grins and points to the arena, announcing that it's her turn. Pandora looks up, realizing her next round has arrived. Her opponent is Mark Sheen, a foreign-looking young man with jet black hair and an air of arrogance. As Pandora steps onto the platform, Mark sizes her up with a smug smile, his muscular frame taut with confidence. He introduces himself, asking her name even as the countdown begins. Pandora says nothing, focusing on him with a quiet intensity. He grins even wider, mistaking her silence for admiration. "Get ready for my special attack," he says with a smirk. Phantom Fist Barrage. Pandora rolls her eyes slightly, amused by his enthusiasm for naming his techniques, but she also senses an advantage. He's likely overconfident and eager to impress. The countdown hits 0, and Mark unleashes his attack. In an instant, a flurry of translucent fists appears in the air, all aiming toward Pandora with ferocious speed. The barrage is nearly overwhelming, the strikes raining down in quick succession. Each fist echoes as if the impact were real, moving fast enough to disorient anyone trying to dodge. Pandora's vampiric strength and physical enhancement ability kick in as she counters each of his spectral fists with her own punches. Their rapid strikes clash midair, sending shockwaves through the arena and stirring up the dust into thick clouds around them. The sheer force of their blows makes each impact sound like thunder. As they trade blows, Mark's smirk falters. He seems surprised that she can keep up. Smiling to herself, Pandora decides it's time to try something new. Luma leaned back in her chair, gazing at the holographic display floating in the air. She was watching the Metacup, and her heart began to race as she remembered who was fighting. She still couldn't shake off that memory. Was that really chaos energy? She wondered, recalling how some people claimed that chaos energy, when visible, appeared as black and purple. But Luma knew equally well that she wasn't supposed to be able to perceive chaos energy at all. And yet, she couldn't fully explain what she had sensed when she tried to probe Pandora's potential using her Arcanus ability. The overwhelming feeling of boundlessness still made her stomach churn. Focusing again on the display, Luma thought, if she truly has so much potential that I couldn't even see its limits, switching sides might be the best decision I ever make. The real question, though, was whether Pandora would choose to be a hero or a villain. If she becomes a hero, that's perfect for me since I already work for the Hero Association. And if she joins too, I'll benefit from every success she has. But if she turns villain, well, switching sides might be worth it, depending on the rewards, she mused. Just then, she noticed something new in Pandora's duel. Pandora's fists had ignited with a bright turquoise flame. Luma let out a sharp gasp as she watched Pandora manifest 5 plasma orbs behind her, each shimmering with energy. Pandora seemed to be learning and improving even in the midst of combat. She tried to control the plasma orbs behind her, but they dissipated, fading into wisps of smoke. Focusing solely on her blazing fists, Pandora advanced, forcing her opponent to retreat. He could no longer meet her blows head-on, each attempt left him burned. Finally, he raised his hands and declared his surrender. His hands were scorched, his fingers and palms marked with raw, visible wounds. Luma watched as the fight ended, with Pandora's opponent exiting the arena. Pandora also turned away, walking in the opposite direction without any fanfare. Luma was left alone with her thoughts once more, wondering what would happen next. Her gut feeling told her that the upcoming times would be exciting. She stood up from her sofa, the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her apartment and flooding her spacious living room. The bright yellow sunlight blended with the bluish light from the small sun, giving the entire room an almost exotic glow. The flower pots and plants that adorned the space sparkled beautifully in the light. The bluish sunlight reflected off the turquoise blue blossoms of a nearby bush. Luma smiled as she looked at her plants, knowing how much she loved them and how diligently she cared for them. Stretching once more, she felt awake enough to prepare herself some lunch. What should I eat? She wondered, suddenly craving pasta. Just as the kettle brought the water to a boil, a call came through on her holographic wristband. Luma answered. "What's up?" she asked. "Well, this should interest you," a male voice replied on the other end. "May I ask why you don't want to do a video call? I'd like to show you something," the man said. "It's because I'm currently just in my underwear at home. And you probably shouldn't care about that, Gaius," Luma replied. "Fair point. Anyway, what I wanted to inform you about is that if you've been following the news beyond the Meta Cup, you'd see that the Octart has become more active. I suspect they want to undermine trust in us heroes. The issue isn't that they pose a significant threat, but that I know some known villains are joining them. We've at least confirmed from the villain Sandman that he has allied himself with the Octart," Gaius said, slightly stressed. "And what does that have to do with me?" Luma asked, pouring the boiling water into the pot. As she added the pasta, she began preparing the sauce. Tears welled in Luma's eyes as she chopped the onions for the tomato sauce. "It concerns you because if this organization continues to gain power, it could cause real problems for us heroes. If trust in heroes erodes, some of us might even quit," Gaius explained. "I don't think it'll come to that. You're just being a pessimist, Gaius," she said, rolling her eyes. "That's not pessimism, it's realism. I factor in all possible outcomes in my calculations," Gaius insisted. For a brief moment, Luma thought back to Pandora and smiled. It really could be what Gaius foresaw for the future. However, she kept what she had seen in Pandora to herself, sticking to her role as a hero. She continued chatting with her old friend before finally hanging up. Her thoughts drifted to the crimes the Sandman, that notorious villain, had committed. His Arcanus ability, named Phantom Sand, allowed him to put people in a trance and control them. He claimed that these individuals experienced pleasant dreams, but the veracity of that claim had yet to be proven. Luma felt nauseous at the thought of what this villain had done with his powers. He had forced women to do things he found appealing in a twisted way. She clearly remembered a woman with red hair and red eyes standing completely naked. Luma didn't want to think any further. But that woman, a former soldier who was thin and muscular, seemed to fit his type. This incident with the Sandman had convinced Luma, as it had many others, that this world was far from what the Hero Association presented to the general public. In her eyes, the law of the jungle prevailed here. It was something rarely discussed in the Hero Association, yet Luma was certain that the world couldn't be neatly divided into black and white, or even into various shades of gray. The world was much more complex than the heroes wanted it to be. The thought that the world is black and white seemed absurd to Luma. Yet she knew that most people accepted the tales of righteous heroes and villains, along with destruction and their own interests, without questioning them. It was clear to her that this wasn't the case, but she also knew that it was better not to voice such opinions publicly. She was aware that there were heroes who would not react kindly to her thoughts. When I consider that the media is controlled by powerful heroes and the Hero Association, it's probably not a good idea to share my opinions in any way. Not that I intended to seriously do so. It wouldn't change anything, and besides, the advantages I have from working for the Hero Association would disappear. So, I'll just have to keep playing along as always, Luma thought. I guess I'll just have to wait and see, she murmured quietly to herself. Finally, she added some herbs to the tomato sauce, stirred in a bit of garlic, and then tossed in some corn. Once her meal was ready, she drained the pasta water into the sink. A quick glance through the glass front showed her that a storm was brewing on the horizon. Luma sat down at the dining table and began to eat, her thoughts drifting to the villains, the Octard, and the Hero Association, often abbreviated as HA. The people labeled as villains are just humans neglected by society. Like my brother. Just because he had a simple wish, he was classified as a villain. His desire was, and still is, to create beautiful clothes for anyone who asks. I've never quite understood why he associates that wish with villainy. Now, I only know him by his villain name, Iron Hat. I hope he's doing well. As she thought about this, it also occurred to her that she needed to go shopping again soon. A glance at the clock revealed it was only 3 p.m. This Metacup is really a long, difficult, and complicated event. The sound of military helicopters echoed as candidates from other countries were brought to Metropolis Alpha. Those who had made it to the finals were only a handful. But their powers should not be underestimated. From the millions of aspiring heroes, perhaps only a handful had reached the finals. Most of those who had failed had drawn the attention of local gangs or smaller hero academies. However, as Luma casually scanned through the list of hero candidates, she couldn't shake the feeling that the theory held true, that with each generation, the abilities of heroes grew stronger. If this trend continued, it would only take a few more decades to finally end this ancient war. But that very reality complicated the economic situation. The villains who weakened society from within ensured that this war would continue indefinitely. If humanity could unite, the eternal war would have ended long ago. If people weren't naturally inclined to distrust and fight each other, this world wouldn't be such a great enigma for humanity. And now, Pandora, the rising star, is up against the young prodigy from the Cater family. In this round, the two champions, Camilla Cater and Pandora, will face off against each other, the commentator suddenly announced. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to recommend it to your friends as well. I hope to see you all in the next video. This was part 11 of Pandora and the Eternal War. In the next episode, the Meta Cup finals will finally take place, and the paths of the future will begin to shift. If you're eager to follow Pandora's adventures and find out what happens next, stay tuned for the upcoming part of this story. If you click on the left side of the screen, you can watch my latest video, and on the right, you'll find the playlist for this story. And in the top center, you'll see my YouTube channel, where you can check out all my videos. See you next time, and goodbye. Asterisk.